Abdul Majid, and I'd like to thank you all for putting up with me for the evening. Thank you everyone for having me.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, let's give a warm hand to Rima. We're doing a great job. I don't think she had any reason to be. I realize I'm the last person standing between you and going home, so I'll keep my remarks to just under an hour. And thank you for your patience. Really, my job is to give thanks to the many people that helped make this event a success this evening. But before I close with that, I want to share with you a couple of minutes reflection about a story that's been shared on Facebook more recently. And I don't know if you've read it or not. It's a little video about an experiment that they did with 6 photographers photographing the same person. The premise of the whole story is that they brought 6 different photographers, and they said to each one of them, you're going to photograph Michael. But to each one of them, they said, Michael is a different story. They gave a different background to Michael, a couple of liners about who Michael is. So to the first photographer, they said Michael's a millionaire. To the second photographer, they said Michael is a fisherman, an ex-convict, a recovered alcoholic, someone who saved somebody's life, and what have you. 6 different stories to each different photographer. And then they brought the photographers back and showed them the panorama of the images that each photographer has taken of the same subject, who's Michael. And the difference in the angle, in the view, in the expression in the face of Michael was varied dramatically, and varied because of the 2-liners that people have heard, or the photographer has heard, about who Michael is. Some argued that, this is a flawed, quote-unquote, experiment. If you wanted to see who the better photographer is, you give them the same story, and you look at 6 different sets of pictures, and you decide. But you're missing the point if that's your line of thought. The point of this story is the power of the narrative. The power of the narrative in that they gave the photographer a couple of simple sentences. They said, Michael is a millionaire. And the photographer who's taking the pictures asked Michael a few questions, but within the paradigm of the preface. He's a millionaire. So they asked him, how did you make your wealth? How do you spend it, and what have you. When he was a fisherman, they asked him the same questions, but within the framework of the paradigm that they were given, or the background that they were given about him. And that is what organizations like an MAI do, is that they change the narrative. What lens are you seeing the world through will impact what you're seeing. Now, we can do our part. We can engage politicians, we can talk to different stakeholders within the state, but really it is an obligation on each and every one of us in the things that we do in our day-to-day life. Your relationship with your neighbor, your relationships at work, your relationships with your superiors, with your people that you work with, and everybody, that will impact the lens that you're being viewed in the world. Live your life the way that Islam has taught us to live, and people will stand in your defense, just like with Brother Azhar Khan, and people stood in his defense. Do not let the narrative of the few, the minute, it's less than 1% of, or however the number is, that's influencing the conversation of 1.6 billion people. Do not get sucked into that, because that's what's driving us further and further into their ideology and into their narrative. So what I say to you in closing is that what you do on a day-to-day basis carries a much greater impact than what an organization like us does, or any other organization in the state of Indiana or in the United States. So with that, I want to thank all of our volunteers for this evening. They've done a great job in making a smooth night for us tonight. I would like to thank the awards recipient for the amazing work that they do on a day-to-day basis. Thank our guest speakers. Thank, the speaking of narrative and what lens you see the world through. The FBI comes to our mosque in Fort Wayne area to have conversations with us. If anything, God forbid, happens, they say, we know this mosque. We have no concerns about that. I want to thank Mr. Abbott for creating, for leading an organization within our state that is open to such communication and that extends that line of communication to us. And to the great speakers and speeches that we heard tonight. And special thanks to our sponsors, Amana Mutual Funds and Iman Fund, which you can learn more about on the backs of your programs for this evening. Thank you, Jazakumullah khair, God bless, safe travels, and have a good night.